Hello and welcome to the solution to coding challenge number 20. Last week I gave you a code which should work in theory but somehow doesn't. So let's go through it and debug it together. Now the first step in debugging is always trying to run the code. We can do it by pressing the F5 key and saying, for example, help Daniel of 5, for example. Now, as we can see, we have an error, but also most importantly, we can see that in the first line, or the first two to be exact, the function has indeed printed something, which should, in theory, looking at the first 3 lines of our code, namely lines 4, 5, and 6, be the representation of a 5 by 5 matrix with all the values set to 0. Except as you can see here, although it looks like a 5 by 5 matrix, it actually isn't. It is instead a single list containing 5 elements inside it. Now if we remember the example I gave you last week, which should be this, you can see that it has nothing to do with what we've seen here. So let's try and rework the first line, line number 4, in order for it to get it to represent exactly what we're looking for, namely a 5 by 5 matrix with all the values set to 0. We can do that by rewriting this first line and saying 0, which is a single element, times size, which means it will be a list containing 5 number zeros, and that's correct. And then we will say for I in range size. Now, the rest of this we can put on hold for a minute, and by pressing Ctrl 1, that will make all of that as a comment, so the code won't read it as a code. So now let's focus on the first 3 lines and see if they work correctly. We can run them, and we can write on the right-hand side, help Daniel. Aha! Now this is what we like to see, namely a 5 by 5 matrix with all the values set to 0. So now we know that the first 3 lines of code work correctly. So we can go ahead and uncomment the next set of lines. We can again run the code, and then on the right hand side, now there's a problem. It says that our list index is out of range. And luckily for us, Python also tells us in what row the problem occurs. In this case, it says in line 11. Now why is that? Look at what line 11 says. It says, take our array, which we know will have 5 elements in it, and then take the item located in position size minus column. Now we know that column will iterate from 0 to size minus 1. So let's for example say that column is equal to 0. Now size minus 0 will just be size. So array of size doesn't make sense. Now why is that? Because size will be equal to 5. However, our array also contains only 5 elements. So the number 5 is outside of the range of array because the indices of our array will go from 0 to 4. So we can correct this mistake by writing inside here minus 1. And that will make sure that for column going from 0 to size minus 1, the index will always be within range of the length of our array. Now let's try again and run our code, because of course every time we make a change, we should always test to see what that change actually does. Again we can write help Daniel 5. And this time we don't seem to have had any errors. So let's check our final part of the code. remove the comment, and of course this is quite standard, there shouldn't be any particular mistakes in this, and we can run it once more and say help Daniel 5, and there you have it. We have our output is exactly what we were looking for, namely a 5x5 matrix with all the values set to 0 except for the two diagonals which are set to 1. So there you have it. We have successfully debugged our code. I hope you enjoyed today's challenge, which takes inspiration from the real world of coding. If so, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. As always, I look forward to seeing you all again next week for another video. And until then, happy coding!